Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbeg. Welcome to the Contrary, a weekly discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Our woman thought leader this week is Isabella Guzman, the Small Business Administrator. This agency is incredibly important for women who own a majority of small businesses. Welcome, Administrator Guzman.
It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Why is it that women own more small businesses than men? But yet they always seem to stay incredibly small. They just don't get as large as male-owned businesses.
I mean, it's incredible, the spirit, the entrepreneurialism that we see across our women founders. I think they're seeking opportunity. So oftentimes, especially during crises and recessions like this, the Great Recession previously, rather, like the economic crisis that we're in now as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, you see women seeking opportunity, and I think that's the bottom line, and that's what defines so many of our great entrepreneurs. They have this drive and this hope to build wealth for their families and create a better community, define our main streets with great businesses or solve global problems. And so that's why so many of our women are entering the entrepreneurship opportunity and seeking those growth opportunities for their firms. But so often, based on those historic barriers that women have faced, they have challenges in getting the capital maybe that they need to start and grow or to enter some of the marketplaces. And so that's actually, what SBA is all about. We do have to celebrate the great gains we've made. I mean, it's been 101 years since some women earned the right to vote, a big step forward for equality. And of course, women of color had to wait further, but we now have the first woman of color vice president, Kamala Harris, serving alongside President Biden. And, together they've made equity, gender and racial equity a top priority for the administration. And so within the SBA, of course, that fight for equality is strong because we see, women starting businesses at such high rates and in need of some equity across capital access and market access.
Now, when we look at the gender pay gap, for example, white women earn something like 32 cents on the dollar, I believe it is, for what men, I'm sorry, I might have reversed that, 60 something cents on the dollar for what men make. And for African-American women, it's almost in the single digits. Tell me how that is about business ownership. What percentage of small businesses are owned by white women, women of color, and women of different ethnicities?
We see that there are strong rates of women entrepreneurship broadly, but that more recently, women of color are starting rates at the highest levels than ever before, actually for the past several years. And so you see those gaps decreasing, but they still have a long way to go. So I know that in terms of our Black and Hispanic and Asian founders, they're all seeking opportunity, and along with women, they continue to face some of those challenges to grow. But with with entrepreneurship as a great equalizer in terms of building wealth, I think the SBA is poised to try to position these women to actually reach more parity in terms of their job creation and their revenue growth in the economy, which would of course benefit all of us to see all of our businesses be able to reach their full potential and strengthen our global competitiveness.
Small businesses are as we all know, the greatest job creators in this country. How do women-owned small businesses figure in? And what is the average size in terms of employees of a woman-owned business in this country?
The majority of women are, small, the smallest of the small, 20 and under employees for sure. Majority, sole proprietors as well. And many of them hit that, glass ceiling of $1 million in revenues for their firms. And so it's a very, small percentage who actually are able to overcome those barriers and be able to fully, take advantage of market opportunities. That's the challenge. And I think that, whether it's the historic barriers or some additional technical assistance that is required. I mean, we tend to, see that, while women have strong performance in their ventures, they're not able to access the, venture capital at high rates as those of their peers in the male founder world. And so I do think that, if we start to look at the actual performance numbers, more than bringing in some of our biases or some of our, historic barriers that might exist around wealth creation for our women of color, for example, then we can start to see more parity if we're just trying to look out for great opportunities. And I think as we're seeing the market strength of the women who are founders out there creating and solving for gaps in the marketplace that maybe their male peers are missing, and seeing those venture capitalists who are willing to invest in them take advantage of those opportunities, I think that you'll start to see more investments. In fact, across our small business investment companies, the SBA has multiple programs for women founders. Of course, our traditional capital programs, our technical assistance programs. We have, over 136 women's business centers that are specially tailored to support women with technical assistance and capital access and market access. But in particular, with our, small business investment companies, we are trying to narrow those gaps of investment in women founders and definitely trying to incentivize diversity across our small business investment companies. We fund the largest, lower middle market fund to fund, and we want to expand those opportunities. And in the President's Build Back Better agenda, there includes some key investments in SBA's programs around financing, lending, and investments.
Can you go into a bit of detail about that? You were, of course, appointed by President Biden, and how does he want to change things? As we know, he's just, diversity is a much more important issue to him than it was for the Trump administration. How does that change what happens at the Small Business Administration?
Mm-hmm. Well, we saw it immediately in terms of the investments and commitment in equity, with the American Rescue Plan and the efforts to try to ensure that we're building an economy that works for all of our entrepreneurs, because as he says, ideas come from everywhere and anywhere. And within the American Rescue Plan, we had key programs to try to support diversity. Of course, our immediate grant programs, like the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, where we prioritized outreach for women ventures as well. And then, most importantly, I think the Community Navigators pilot program, which is especially focused on those underserved entrepreneurs, including women, who need that extra connection to resources, and we need to build better bridges to those communities. And so the SBA is going to partner with trusted community organizations that can reach women and people of color and veterans and rural communities with authentic local voices, and connect them to either SBA's resources or any federal resources, as well as some state and local programs. And so from the very get-go, we've been really trying to focus on those diverse founders. Even within the Paycheck Protection Program, we received over 96% of the loans, forgivable loans funded into 2021 were to smaller ventures, 20 and under, where I said that those underserved businesses dominate, really trying to help support those businesses access resources. And then now within the President's broader Build Back Better agenda, the investments at the SBA to strengthen entrepreneurship and small business support are going to be focused on making sure that the underserved businesses are included in our programs. And so across our capital programs, we will, create programs that will better support underserved communities, as well as within our innovation space, accelerators, as well as in the government contracting space and the technical assistance around those programs. So there's some really key opportunities to help these businesses actually thrive and overcome some of those historic barriers and those those limitations that restrict them to that $1 million revenue mark.
I'm coming to you as a small business entrepreneur. You're talking here about community organizers. Tell me, how do I get access to a loan application from the SBA? Where online do I go?
The SBA is probably one of the oldest and one of the best public-private partnerships. We work with a network of lenders across the country on our core lending programs. And those include banks, the credit unions, the community banks, as well as the community financial institutions. And so visiting sba.gov and connecting with one of our local partners, either district offices or resource partners like the Women's Business Centers, is oftentimes the first step because they can help you prepare to get capital ready. And then we also have, on our website, sba.gov, connections to capital through this great tool called Lender Match, where you can actually find a lender that can match to you. So once you're matched or you go directly to any of these lenders, SBA is a great option that tries to fill market gaps with products that are guaranteed by the federal government so small businesses can get capital that they need to grow. And within the Build Back Better agenda, we want to try to strengthen that so that we can develop direct lending programs for where the market gaps are really strong in the 150,000 and under small dollar range. And so we're going to continue to evolve in how we serve so that small businesses that are trying to navigate all of those resources out there can come to the SBA as a trusted partner.
Why is it that obviously access to capital is critical for all businesses? If you can't get a loan when you start a business, you're not going to be able to grow it very large unless you happen to be wealthy, and can pump a lot of equity into the company and possibly lose it. So why is it that men still in this day and age, male entrepreneurs still have better access to capital than women?
I think across the lending portfolio, there are some historic barriers that, not just for people of color, but also for women. Maybe they don't have the wealthy assets to use as collateral. Maybe there's, challenges in terms of how they're presenting themselves. And that's why our women's business centers are so great, because they work specifically customized to women entrepreneurs to make sure that they are capital ready and know how to approach these lenders or connect with the lenders who are committed to supporting, women entrepreneurs. And so I think there's definitely strategies to how to get capital ready. And that applies to, venture or traditional loans or investment capital and private equity. So across the board, we're just trying to position these women to be ready for that. But there are just historic biases that multiple studies have referenced, showing that the investors themselves are missing out on opportunity by going with what they think will be a successful venture, not really opening to the possibilities of what these women founders are creating and doing. And so there's a definite market inefficiency out there just across our investor base.
Are there laws against discrimination on the basis of gender or race in terms of lending to startup businesses?
Oh, yes, of course. It's just more a matter of, positioning these businesses, for success and making sure that they're able to pursue and be diligent about going after that capital. So I think it's just some of these, historic biases that, that aren't intentional at all. And so that's what we have to overcome by continuing to elevate these successful female entrepreneurs in our midst and show the successes that we have across our programs, which I think more and more, especially during COVID, where we've seen the impacts on female entrepreneurs in particular and people of color, across the board, or women rather across the board, that we need to make sure that we're paying special attention to remove some of those historic biases or barriers.
And let me just be clear, when I say women, I mean women of all colors. I don't just mean white women, but women of all cultures, ethnicities, LGBTQ, etc. Are there certain kinds of women who, certain categories of women, demographics, who face more discrimination when trying to start up small businesses than other women do.
Yeah, I think that's laid out in the research that's out there, especially around PPP as an example. We saw that people of color had more disparity in accessing PPP at all, or at the levels that they believe that their firm was eligible for. So I do think that women of color have those challenges along with all people of color that they have to face, as well as just some historic wealth disparities that exist, that limit their access to those opportunities or to those capital programs out there for them. So that's definitely a factor. I think that's why we're trying to make sure that we're representing and reaching out to all of our great entrepreneurs to make sure that they can connect to those resources and prepare themselves and feel comfortable in the environment. I think we know that entrepreneurs get knocked down, and your ability to keep on getting up and pursue and no matter how many no's you might get, I think across the board all entrepreneurs face those multiple no's, and so just arming our entrepreneurs with those resources so that they know that there are multiple options out there for them and they can keep on pursuing their dreams.
President Biden has been quoted as saying that those worst hit economically by COVID have been women. Many millions of women who were in the workforce were knocked out. They either lost jobs or had to give them up because they lost access to childcare. And so women are not doing as well as they were, even though many new jobs have been created, or at least for a while have been created. We're in an interstitial period right now where we don't know which way the COVID is going. Are we going back into another pandemic, or are we, is it still going to be fairly limited, the number of Americans who come down with COVID? But how do you see women and starting small businesses, and particularly women of color, post the major part of the pandemic, where we are right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, we do know that they've had the disparate impact, that they've either been forced out of the workforce or had to close their businesses. In many cases, they struggled to feed their families and keep a roof over their heads in many cases. And I know across the board, all women have really had to face this challenge of finding quality, affordable childcare. Because so they ended up balancing work or business, so they weren't reaching their full potential even from that perspective. It's a lot to juggle. And so that's why these investments through the American Rescue Plan, as well as in the Build Back Better agenda, in our commitment to quality childcare is so important for our women entrepreneurs, because I think that is what became clear as well, that impact has affected their ability to pursue their dreams or remain in the workforce. And I know that, but despite that, though, we're still seeing the higher rates of entrepreneurship amongst women and people of color. So it's both. There has been some opportunity out there for businesses, and in fact, I know that we received more than 1 million new business applications this year versus 2020 versus the previous year. So you'd already seen those increases starting to happen, and we'll still see the numbers when this is over by 2021. But I do think that there's opportunity for women entrepreneurs out there. Hopefully, as we continue to be diligent about fighting COVID-19 and make these investments in our healthcare and prevention with vaccinations, shots in arms, that we can see our businesses recover and see many of our women being able to go back to work with affordable childcare.
Is there an age difference in terms of women's entrepreneurialism? It just strikes me as I was very entrepreneurial for my time, but it seems like the millennials and the Gen X and Y and are even more entrepreneurial than boomers were, for sure. Is that true? Young women are more likely to go out and, rather than spend a lot of time working for another small business, go out and start their own than they were 20, 40 years ago?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I have not been aware of any significant age discrepancy, but in fact, we have a strong partnership, with a second act type of entrepreneurs, and continue to try to work, because entrepreneurship is actually could be women exiting corporate careers, successful corporate careers, and deciding to launch their business. Maybe they've reached their highest potential in the corporate world, and so there's those types of entrepreneurs as well as second act entrepreneurs, and then the younger founders as well. So my understanding is across the board, but it does feel exciting that you continue to see in the science-based and technology-based, those innovative and technology-based startups. You continue to see trends of progress in the venture capital space in supporting women founders.
Do you deal specifically with tech startups?
The SBA does both. So we do the everyday businesses, our Main Street, our manufacturers, and to the innovative and technology science-based startups. And we have a strong program that we help power at the federal level called the Small Business Innovation Research Grants, and its companion state technology transfer research grants, where we support entrepreneurs or these entrepreneurial ideas at the very beginning, its inception, seed capital to help them create their idea, at the very beginning. And those research dollars that the federal government spends, there's a set aside for small businesses to participate and get this non-dilutive funding. The SBA has been really committed to trying to expand the reach and build bridges to those underserved communities, women, people of color, veterans, rural communities as well, so that we can spur those ideas further and invest in these, solutions for global problems.
What types of small businesses are women likely to start these days? Are they more likely to start small businesses like daycare centers, or are they more likely to start websites where they can sell something and perhaps make, huge amounts of money doing so? I think like makeup, so young women selling makeup lines, it seems like a lot of them are in the news for making huge amounts of money, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they over-index in several industries. The traditional, restaurants, but as well as professional services, across the board, retail and product offerings. I think you'll find, women across the board participating in so many marketplaces. And I think, definitely we're recognizing the important value and the size of so many of these marketplaces, that women have ideas that can be successful. And so, the whole personal care and makeup, there's been huge investments, recently in trying to reach more women and more diverse women as well, and seeing movements there and supporting women founders as they create things that they want to use themselves, right? But I do think, that's where, we'll see publicly, but across the board, I see women founders in manufacturing and in Main Street and of course our innovative startups.
And when they start things like non-traditional businesses, which actually, I've heard about so many women running construction companies and housing development companies and so on over the last 20 years, that it's not such a, yes, they're still the minority in the field, but they're there, whereas 40 years ago, they weren't even there. Do they do as well when they start in so-called non-traditional industries for women as when they do start small businesses catered to women's needs, like daycare, like house cleaning, like
I haven't seen disparity studies on that by industry, that you have better odds of success in a certain sector. I think that across the board, we still see, less revenue generation and job creation amongst our underserved businesses. And so, I would say regardless, there's still those challenges in every sector, but we hope to continue to double down on women across multiple fields, especially with these investments in infrastructure. We want to see women contractors in the mix and winning these contracts from the federal government and state and local projects. And so there's a continued commitment at the SBA to invest in that market access opportunity for small businesses and make sure that our women entrepreneurs are contract ready.
And do you expect to see a third round of PPP loans going out, or is that over and done with?
Yes, at this point, the PPP program is closed. There's no statutory authority to continue that. That would need to be an act of Congress if, depending on our direction. But we hope that we can continue to battle COVID-19 and help create safer main streets and industrial centers so that our businesses can fully reopen and rebuild.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much. I've been speaking with Isabella Guzman, small business administrator, about her agency, which is so critical to women's financial development and women's ultimate financial equality, being able to start and keep small businesses and grow them into larger businesses. That's it for this edition. Please continue the conversation with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Please go to our PBS website, www.tothecontrary.org. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next time.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/To the Contrary.
Be more. PBS.